First thing I want to do is give thanks and ask for a blessing. So Heavenly Father, thank you for safely bringing us all together here today. I pray for the ability to effectively communicate the wisdom that you have shared with me as you guided me, like you guided Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. I pray that you grant the men and women here the maximum benefit from what I have to offer. And I really appreciate you all coming out. Thank you very much. So, in Isaiah 1:17 says to defend the fatherless and plead the cause of the widow. And in Matthew 25 says to visit the prisoners. And it also says to set the captives free. And I try and do a bunch of that. And I know that some are here because they have family or friends behind bars. And as our good friend Ron here, who's helped with, he's put this whole thing together, made this room look the way it looks. Ron has had his experience and knows that, in his own words, more than 75% of the people behind bars don't belong there. And that's just the way it is. The shysters put a lot of innocent people behind bars. And they have a system that makes it profitable for them. But it's certainly hell and misery for everyone else. So, let's see here. I have a disclaimer, and that is, first, I am not licensed to practice law. Thus, I cannot and will not provide legal advice. I merely recount the various facts, presumptions, hypotheses, and personal experiences that have led me to certain conclusions and theories as to how the legal system generally functions. Second, no legal theory or strategy works all the time. The best lawyers in the world routinely lose cases based on legal strategies and theories that the judge or jury deems unconvincing. Thus, the only thing you can expect from any legal theory or strategy is that it may increase the probability that you may win at court. Third, you must recognize that to be free, one must also be independent and personally responsible. Thus, if you hear a theory or a strategy at this seminar, whether from me or just from other people in the gathering here, and that theory seems valuable to you, you must independently confirm the value of that information and its applicability in your own case, because we all have to take personal responsibility, and it's easy to make mistakes in this. They have case law and all that, and then the Supreme Court reverses their own decisions and things like that. It's kind of nebulous in some circumstances. And fourth, I present this seminar within the boundaries of Arizona, a state of the union, to living men and women. I make this presentation without prejudice to my God-given unalienable rights and at arm's length. The next thing is that I need to ask, are there any government agents present here? Well, no one has admitted to being a government agent, so they can't use anything that's gathered here as evidence against you or me. I'll explain right now that I'm not a genius, and I cannot answer every question, although given some time and drawing upon my own experience along with a little help from friends, I've been able to help quite a few people, or I should say, quite a few men and women deal with this oppressive system. I was in California doing a seminar, and the break came, and a fellow came up, and so I'm going to address this right now. He came up and he said, in a very stern tone of voice, he said, "You get people out of prison?" And I could tell what he was thinking. He's thinking, I get murderers, rapists, and robbers off so that they can do it all over again. Well, that's not what I'm about. And I explained it to him like this. My interest is in helping the innocent, and I'll even help the repentant. I certainly am not going to get involved with anyone who is going to continue to do evil. Okay? Now, in the category of those who would continue to do evil, there are some serious and real good con men. And an example that comes to mind is my friend Brady has a good friend, Fred, and Fred has a son. And Fred's son was indicted for having a meth lab on his property. Well, it was a detached garage, and the claim was that he didn't know anything about what was going on in the rent. Another guy rented the detached garage for furniture making. And anyway, Brady asked me for my help because it was his good friend Fred. It was Fred's son, and it was presented to me that this was all, that this guy was innocent. Well, turns out that, and the point I'm getting to is this: I cannot overcome the hand of the Almighty. And it goes like this. I put in some of my best work helping Brady, and this was for the fellow's allocution, and we had an allocution script ready for him, and that guy could not speak. Our Heavenly Father, he came in, and he was just like head hung low, and all of the excuses had disappeared, and he literally couldn't speak. He couldn't take the paper and even just read what it was on the paper. And so he went to prison, and it turned out that that's where he belonged. And who knows? We don't know what our Heavenly Father's purposes are. That guy was caught, and he went to prison, and it may be that it saves his life, because maybe he was involved in a drug that would have killed him in a year or two. But anyway, I think I hope you understand where I'm coming from on that point. I'd like to ask Ron, do you think it's ringing a little bit too much or not?
No.
It's okay?
I think you're listening to the air conditioner.
Okay. So, I'd like to ask a couple questions so I know the level of where people are at in this class. I know that there's probably some people here that are flat out experts and may even know more than me. Hopefully they still get a point or two from this opportunity here. I know that from attending a lot of seminars myself that sometimes you pick up not only what the speaker has to say, but mingling with others, you pick up points as well. And hopefully, whatever your problem is, success is within your grasp. So, are there people here that consider themselves complete novices? Okay. All right. Well, we will cover it, and I hope everyone else has the patience for it. That, we'll try and really quickly cover certain points on that. Like for instance, I will speak about affidavits, and I can't tell you how many times I've run into it where somebody does up a document and they put at the top of it affidavit, and it's not an affidavit because an affidavit has to have certain elements, and if they're not there, it's not an affidavit, even though they labeled it one. So we'll cover some of that stuff, and with regards to affidavits, habeas corpus, amicus curiae, all that kind of stuff, and what it means, style of the case, etc. We'll cover that. So for the benefit of the new people, so that they can hopefully leave here at the end of this weekend with a foundation from which they can move forward with power and authority. So, that. And I want to also share that the good news is that whether you're a novice or in the middle or wherever you are in your status in learning this law stuff, you can win, even if you're at the lowest level. And you can win. You can win on the law. You can win on the facts. You can win on the procedure. You can win on the counsel issue alone. You can win by sheer fluke, or you can win by prayer power. And maybe there's other things that I haven't even mentioned. But you can win. And it's just a matter of educating yourself to the best of your ability, for one thing, to start with. It's like my concept of it is I have to work as hard as I can, as if everything depends on me, and pray as if everything depends on our Heavenly Father. And of course, in the ultimate final analysis, I believe it does depend on our Heavenly Father. What I intend to do in this weekend is to share some powerful tools with you folks. And we'll start off with my background, so it has some information in it, and you'll have a better understanding where I'm coming from, and you'll also get some of that information as we cover that issue of my background, and then we'll go into the powerful tools that you can use to overcome various situations in the legal environment. And when we can cover those tools, I'd like to do it with examples from my experience, or maybe other people's experiences. We'll cover affidavits, the counsel issue, amicus curiae, habeas corpus, offer of proof, show cause, and a particular thing that they like to do to us all the time is they will state a rule, and that rule could crush you in a court case. Okay? But the comeback on the rules is 28 USC 2072B.
B.
B, like in Bumblebee.
Would you repeat that?
Okay, sure. 28 USC 2072B. Now,
Like
28, huh?
Like bump.
Yeah, but so anyway, 28 USC is law, and their rules are their rules, okay? But what 28 USC 2072B says, rules cannot abridge rights. So then you just have to you have to frame your issue within your rights, whether that's the right to free speech or actually what the most powerful of the whole works is your right to free exercise of religion. And in that regard, it's like this. All children going to school must be vaccinated. Oh, unless you're a Christian Scientist, it's against their religion. And everyone has to take the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and all that, unless you're a Jehovah's Witness, they don't believe in it. Everyone has to have their picture on their driver's license, unless they believe that the picture is a graven image and contrary to the first commandment, or not the first commandment, but the commandments. So anyway, I think the First Amendment, free exercise of religion. So there are people who believe that the picture is a graven image, and I've seen the driver's license, and they have a square for the photograph, and inside the square it says valid without photo. Now, I don't know how many have seen that. One gentleman here is two. Okay, two have seen that. I've seen it as well. So, they will try and convince you at the Department of Motor Vehicles that you have to have your picture taken. Well, if you believe that it's a graven image, it's out. So, and there's numerous other things, like one example that comes to mind is a young lady was in a car wreck, if I recall correctly, it was a car wreck. Anyway, she went to the hospital, and they said that, and they told the parents, when the parents called on the phone, they said she needs some blood. The parents went ballistic. They said, no, it's against our religion. The hospital gave her the blood anyway. Okay? Now, if I recall correctly, these people were Jehovah's Witnesses. And they don't believe in that. And the fact of the matter is that the blood in the blood bank is all dead stuff anyway. And it's virtually a hoax, from what I understand, because you can do without the blood. What you need is the fluid. And so if you have with the electrolytes, an electrolyte solution, the body will quickly turn that to blood, and it'll be real blood in your blood, not somebody else's. Well, the somebody else that had donated the blood for this young lady gave her hepatitis and big problem. So religious free exercise is a powerful right, and their rules can't stand up to that, period. And I'll mention one other thing in these tools. People who play chess are at an advantage. And what I mean by that is this. If you play chess, you have to think not just on the next move, but you have to think several moves ahead not just what you're doing, but what the other side is doing. Okay? So that's just a lesson. And of course, if you play chess, it's ingrained in you. If you don't play chess, it's an important thing to keep in mind. It isn't just what you do, it's what they do in response to you, and then what you do in response to their response, and what they do in response to that. And it's back and forth like a tennis match. We have, or I have some books that I hope to arrive here in time. I didn't get a chance to talk to Ron, but we've got some that are probably at your mailbox. So if we get a chance, we need to get them. We've still got today and tomorrow to get them in here. But anyway, one of the items that I wanted to show you is a little book that is like about this size, and it fits in your shirt pocket. And when you open it up, it naturally opens in the middle. And so you're looking at 2 pages, and it's 2 columns of all the objections that you can do in the courtroom. And the outer edges are tabbed. So if you're halfway familiar with these objections, and you open this up and you move down the tabs to the objection that you need, and it flips automatically, you've got it with the tab, you're automatically there, and it's laid out for you perfectly because every word is right, because it was created by a judge. And I think he created it mainly for attorneys as opposed to us. But this is a powerful tool to have, because those attorneys that you're up against, they've had years of training and they've had years of experience. And for a lot of us, it's, our first time, or we've only had a little bit of experience. And by the way, while that's fresh in my mind, if you are much better off handling it and tackling a traffic matter from beginning to end and getting some experience before you ever run into something like federal tax evasion. Because if you get in a traffic case, you can learn your lessons without the jeopardy. But when you go into a major federal felony, the jeopardy can be real serious. It could be 20 years or something like that. And for anyone who's like up at my age, that's a death sentence, And that's the other part of it, is that the worst thing about the prison environment is the fact that you cannot get proper or competent medical care. I mean, they've been known to leave guys in the cell, writhing on the floor, screaming in agony for days or even weeks, and then they just die. And they don't care. At most, not most, a lot of facilities, they just don't care. And what they call it is malingering.
Yeah.
So, anyone who has an actual health problem, they just say, well, he's faking it, and they go on, and they can't be bothered to do anything about checking or making sure. So, and I was going to show you all a couple of books that we'll have here tomorrow. One was the U.S. Government Manual. Another one is O'Connor's. And Judge O'Connor was, or is a judge in Texas. She was an appellate court judge, and she was tired, fed up with attorneys coming in with sloppy paperwork, missing certain essentials, so on and so forth. And so she created a set of books that is like paint by number. And so it just tells you, fill this in here, fill that in there, you know, and they can put in brackets and they say name of defendant, name of plaintiff, name of sheriff, and, you know, county, city, whatever. And all that stuff is, you know, made so that, you know, a 10-year-old could do it. And it's just a beautiful set of books. Of course, you don't have to buy the whole set of everything. You just get what you need, whether that's federal or state or whatever. What was I going to say about that? Whatever you need, they've got it. And even if you're here in Arizona, well, just a flash, I was thinking, there was a habeas corpus that I did. The mother had contacted me, and the family lived in Vermont, and the daughter, Nicole, was in jail in New Hampshire. And at the time, I was cut off from my resources, and so I wrote up the habeas corpus using Texas law. It arrived on the clerk's desk at 1:05 p.m. and by 5 o'clock, Nicole said she was being pushed out of the jail onto the street, and they didn't want to let her finish eating her meal. So you can use what you need to do. You know what I'm saying? And in that particular case, it's called equal footing doctrine. And so the laws, you can use them to your advantage, even in another state. Say, for instance, you're in Florida and they get you for having a concealed weapon. You got a 9mm over your suit jacket or something. And there it's against the law. So, but they're devastated when you say, well, I'm from Vermont and we don't have any of that nonsense in Vermont, and so I'm carrying my gun. Oh, okay. That's just the way it is. So, and then of course there's court decisions, and it's called full faith and credit in the Constitution. So you can have a court decision from Idaho and use it in Arizona under full faith and credit. And mark something else down here before I forget to. Let me just mark down this Rule 12 agency. Texas have a Rule 12, and it makes it real clear. You can challenge the authority of any attorney. And if that attorney cannot show his authority, all their pleadings are stricken from the record. Now, we'll cover that in more detail, but you can use that to win a case. I have done that.
You're talking about his authority to be in the case?
Yes. The attorney always shows up and says, I represent ABC Mortgage or whatever, right? And in the case I was in, well, we're taking a little bit out of step, but it seemed like people perked up with that. So I'll just address it right now real quick. A doctor friend of mine, when I was crippled and blind, he made a house available to me, and he had purchased a house for his daughter when she was going to college, when she'd gone, and he'd gone off to Houston. And so he said, when I said I was in need of a place, and he said, well, here's the keys and the place just down the road here. So after I moved in, we had a big surprise within a matter of days. My doctor friend was going through a bitter divorce, and his ex-wife was trying to make a problem, so she was making a problem. The first time he fell behind, let me say this. This is a guy, this doctor friend of mine, he had 6 clinics, and he had so much going on. He would be at one clinic 6 days a week at separate clinics to keep an eye on them, and he had a staff under him and so on and so forth. Basically, the only way a check got signed is if one of his secretarial staff came to him with a clipboard and a check for him to sign, and he didn't pay attention to this other stuff. He was, I think, earning maybe $10 million a year at the time. And so this piddly little house and the mortgage payment fell behind because they didn't send the notices properly. And what they did is they sent the notice. When he did get a notice that it was behind, no problem, he just paid it right up. The next time, they didn't send him the notice. They sent it to his ex-wife, and she kept it quiet. Thing went into foreclosure. House was sold on the courthouse steps. And next thing, I get the papers that I'm supposed to move out. Well, I didn't move out. So what comes next is forcible detainer action. So forcible detainer action, you go to the JP court, which is a low-level court. I challenge the authority of the attorney. The JP doesn't understand that. It's like, well, if he says he represents the mortgage company, I guess he does. And so he didn't understand it, and he ruled against me. And I just go to the counter and said, I'm going to appeal this up to the county. And so at the county court, things proceed like starting over. And it's called de novo. So things are starting over, and the attorney's filing his papers, and then he's moving for summary judgment, which is coming at a date sometime coming up in the future. They have to give you at least 21 days on the summary judgment. So I filed the Texas Rule 12 Texas Rule 12 challenge to the authority of the attorney, and I filed it and got it a court setting just literally a couple of days prior to the summary judgment. So I was ahead of him, and I slipped there. I say a challenge to the authority of the attorney, and I said the word agency, and the agency is the key. Now, there are a couple of sets of books that are like the Encyclopedia Britannica of law. And one is Corpus Juris, and the other one is Amjur. And they're like, if I recall correctly, they're in their second, revision now. But whether it's first or second, agency is not a topic covered in a paragraph or one page or anything like that. It's like 400 pages. Agency is real serious. And to give you an idea how serious, those who don't know, Michael Minns wrote a book called and he's an attorney. He wrote a book called The Underground Lawyer, and in it he describes a situation. So there's a fellow who's married, and he has an estate and I guess wealth, and he is going overseas to Europe, and he gives power of attorney to his best friend, and he leaves. Now, when he comes back, he comes to find that his best friend liquidated the estate and took all the cash for himself. Not only that, but his best friend divorced him from his wife. But I guess his best friend felt sorry for him because he married into some other woman. and not only that, helped him out by consummating the marriage. So this guy is upset, and it ends up in court, and the judge says, well, did you give him power of attorney? Well, yes, he did. Did you put any restrictions on it? No, he didn't. So the judge says, well, he could do what you could do because of the power of attorney. You could have liquidated your estate and stuck all the cash in his pocket. You don't have to. He's already done it for you. And you could divorce your wife, but you don't have to. He's done it for you. And you could marry some other woman. You don't have to. He's done it for you. The only thing that was against the law was consummating the marriage for him, because that would have been a contract in the nature of prostitution. Everything else stood. So, anyway, agency and authority and all that stuff is a very important topic. And going back to this case, so we come in on my challenge. It's my challenge to the authority of the attorney, and the burden of proof is on him. And he's got a stack of papers, and he's showing the judge this and that, going on, doing all this talking and everything else. And finally he's finished, and the judge turns to me and says, well, Mr. Fox, what do you have to say about that? I said, well, I've already won. And you should see the look on the judge's face. Well, what do you mean you've already won? And I said, well, agency cannot be proven out of the mouth of the agent. It must be proven out of the mouth of the principal. And there's nobody in this courtroom from Bankers Trust of California to substantiate what this guy is saying. And the judge was like flabbergasted. And he said, well, I've never presided over a Texas Rule 12 hearing before. I'm going to have to do some research. And I said, oh, research. I said, I have it all right here in this 3-ring binder. I have all the appellate cases, everything highlighted. I said, you take a look at it, and I'll be expecting your ruling shortly. 10 days later, I had a certified win in my hand. Their lawsuit was in the trash barrel and shredded. So, going along the lines of the plan that I had to share with you, where I'm coming from with this stuff, I was born and raised in Canada, and in 1977, I was in a motor vehicle accident, and tragically 2 people died. There's no way I can bring them back. I myself was taken to the hospital in an ambulance, and from the hospital, I was taken to the jail, and then I was prosecuted on the matter, and with my business I had, and this is all back in the day when I didn't know much, on the legal stuff, and I had an attorney that handled some of the business stuff, and he said to me, he said, you need to get, he said, I do civil stuff, and he said, you need to get yourself a good criminal attorney for this, and I did. So, and in fairness to the guy, he was pretty good, actually. I could have easily had, you would be a complete idiot. But one of the things I did was check with court reporter as to who would be a good attorney. Because you can't go by the Yellow Pages ads or what these guys say on the phone, you know. So it was a court reporter that said that this guy was good. Actually gave me a couple of names, but anyway. So I get this one that's good. Well, went to trial. And the trial delved into every aspect of the accident. I was acquitted. 2-3 days later, I was served with papers at my office, hauling me right back into the court system on exactly the same charge. And I went to the attorney and I said, this is what they're doing. They're hauling me back into the appeals court on the same charge as I've already been acquitted on. He went back in his chair, threw up his hand, like, they can't do that. and I said, well, it appears they have, you know. And this was my beginning of understanding, political persecution. Because I had the misfortune of having this accident with the brother-in-law of the president of the Criminal Trial Lawyers Association, with all the connections. But not only that, he was the chairman of the Zionist organization as well.
President of what?
President or chairman of the Zionist organization in that province in Canada, or in that area. And so they had like very powerful connections. So when you show up in the appeals court, there were 5 judges. One was reading a book, 2 were carrying on a conversation, 1 was looking out the window, and only 1 judge was paying attention to the case. The other 4 had already decided because they were linked with the family deceased. And the 1 judge who was paying attention to the case wrote in his opinion the case had no business being in the appeals court. And his decision enabled me, that made it so that I had a right to go to the Supreme Court of Canada in Ottawa. And so I said to the attorney, I said, I'm going to go to Ottawa and watch my case at the Supreme Court. And he said, well, this is highly unusual. He said, you won't even be able to sit with me. He said, you'll have to sit with the visitors, the tourists in the visitors gallery. And I said, no, if that's where I have to sit, that's where I'll sit. And then he said, this is utterly incredible. He said, anyone who appeals to the Supreme Court of Canada in a criminal case is in prison. But I'd already been acquitted. So it was that bizarre, and it was actually taught at the University Law School that my case was brought about by political manipulation from behind the scenes from its inception. And it was an aberration in law. So you got things going on like this, then there's my case, and then things go back to normal, like that. And the Supreme Court heard the case. I was there. They decided not to decide at the time, and I had to fly back from Ottawa, Ontario, to Winnipeg, Manitoba. And of all the planes and all the seats, who do I end up sitting beside? None other than the prosecutor himself. And the first thing he says to me is, he said, Robert, as far as I'm concerned, personally, I feel you're getting a raw deal here, but it's just my job. And so that's the way it was. And I went back to Winnipeg, and months went by. The overall picture, the part that I hadn't mentioned so far, is that this litigation spanned 3 years, from 1977 to 1980. And during those 3 years, there were numerous death threats. And I knew that these people had the ability to carry that out, because from the outside, somebody can secure a murder on the inside with as little as a carton of cigarettes. So I contemplated the situation. I talked with friends, and I said, well, what do you do? And they said, well, they said if it was them, they'd hit the road. And I thought about it, and I said, okay. So I left Canada, and in 1980, in January, and came to Texas. And for 10 years, I was an illegal alien and a fugitive. As a matter of fact, to this day, there's still a Canada-wide warrant for my arrest. Now, you might notice I'm not there, I'm here. and that we'll be discussing about the power of affidavits. There's 5 affidavits sitting with immigration, and that makes it it puts it in a framework that, well, let me say this. I've been attacked repeatedly by immigration, and had an immigration agent, for instance, screaming at me and everything else, and telling me no ands, ifs, buts, or maybes. I was being deported back to Canada, and I'm still here. Now, one of those affidavits was executed by the attorney, and he blocked a physical attack at the courthouse. He's a big guy. He was 6'4", and he blocked a physical attack at the courthouse and did up his affidavit. And so they know that my life is threatened in Canada, and when your life is threatened, they cannot send you back. Okay? So it amounts to a situation where, the Attorney General for the United States in Washington, D.C. could be pounding the desk with both fists and yelling at the top of his lungs that Fox has to be deported, and the answer is still no, and it's the law. And the interesting thing, like much of the other stuff, is that it comes from this book.
Amen.
Some people here probably know of George Gordon.
Yeah.
Okay, well, when immigration first attacked me, well, let me say this. Okay, I'm getting out of joint here. I should explain it. So for 10 years, I was an illegal alien and a fugitive. Now, I did a process that I call act as if. Which act as if. It's a very powerful thing in my estimation. And act as if is like this. I act as if I belong here, and those around me accept that. Okay? And so I was standing in the barn area at Ruidoso, New Mexico, for instance. This is just one of many examples. And I'm discussing something with a horse trainer there. And it happens that on that day, several truckloads of immigration agents arrive in the barn area. And I mean, the illegal aliens are in a mad dash and a scramble. I mean, they're literally being tackled like football players, And the handcuffs are being put on them. Where I'm standing and talking to the horse trainer, illegal aliens are being handcuffed on both sides of me, only about 6 or 8 feet away. And I don't let any of that enter into my space. I just carry on with my conversation with the horse trainer like I belong there. And, had I made a mad dash like the others, it would have been a different situation. I think you can all appreciate that. If I needed directions in a place, I might flag down a police car and ask for directions from a police officer. You know what I'm saying? If you act like you belong and you act like you know what you're doing, then, then it becomes, it becomes real. If you act like that you know what you're doing in the courtroom, and it doesn't take a lot, just a few pointers and so on. By the way, I highly recommend that even if you don't have a case yourself, that you sit and watch trials or arraignments. They'll have arraignments, they'll have 50 people in for arraignments. You'll see that they process them like cattle. If you watch a trial, you get to see how the thing goes. You see what happens from beginning to end, and you become acclimated to the situation. Even if you have a case, when the case starts up and you know which judge it's going to be with, you can get into his courtroom and watch how he is and watch what happens. Now, for instance, I was in front of a judge who was a stamp collector, and I'm a stamp collector. Well, I had this big priority mail envelope with a stamp about this size with the lunar lander on it, and he hadn't seen that before, and he was all excited. And if the judge was a golfer, you could relate golf jokes with him or something, to break the ice. But anyhow, there's all kinds of advantages to being in that courtroom and acclimating yourself to it. If you go in and it's a completely foreign environment, it'll be a lot harder for you to function in. But if you've sat through trials, then you have a gist of how it goes, and you can go in there and act as if you know what you're doing. Real quick, for those who don't know, the part in the Bible is that it's described like this: 2 men go out to chop wood in the forest, and the one guy takes a swing with the axe, and oops, the axe head comes off, hits his friend in the head, and kills him dead on the spot. Well, the survivor is instructed to flee to the city of refuge and to avoid the avenger of blood. Well, who's the avenger of blood? The other guy's family. They don't care that it was an accident. They don't care that these two guys were friends. They don't care about anything. Their family member is dead, and they want him dead too. So the survivor is instructed to flee to the city of refuge, and Moses was instructed to set up 3 cities of refuge on one side of the Jordan and 3 on the other side. And as the territory of Israel was expanded, more cities of refuge. In Numbers you read about it. I think it's like 42 or 44 cities of refuge. Anyway, one of the things I said to immigration basically is there must be 3 cities of refuge on one side of the Mississippi and 3 on the other. I said, I guess it's Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Dallas. I was in Dallas at the time. I said, well, if I'm mistaken, let me know, I'll move. and I'm still here. I was in Dallas for 25 years. And in 1990, immigration, let me say this, in the end of the 80s there was, I forget what year it was exactly, it might have been around 89. They had that amnesty program for the illegal aliens, and they kept the immigration office open till 12 midnight. And at 10 minutes to 12, I walked in, still with a great deal of trepidation about doing anything with government. I'd already had an experience with government in Canada. And so I filled out the paperwork and the rest of that, and then things were in process. And the day came when they said, come on in, we need to talk to you. For your benefit, I'll cover that little point here, just real quick. Ed McCabe, who wrote Oxygen Therapies, got himself a booth at a thing called Whole Life Expo in New York. Now, a booth is, a space at this expo, and he only had one thing to sell, Oxygen Therapies book. So he asked me if I wanted to share the booth with him, and I said, okay, we'll share the booth. So I go there, and they have a desk where exhibitors come in and get their package, and lay out where their booth is and their badge and all that stuff. So this guy presents me 8.5 by 14, like legal size paper, and it's all fine print like the backside of a car rental agreement. And he says, sign here. I said, I have to sign this? He said, absolutely. If you don't sign it, no booth. Oh, okay. So I pick up the pen and I write 2 words, and they weren't Robert Fox. They were religious objector. He took the paper and stuck it in his drawer. Okay? Now, turns out at this event that they had undercover agents that were wired. They had hidden cameras, and they set up 4 people for felonies. If you were there and he recommended chicken soup for a cold, you were practicing medicine without a license. That kind of thing. They wanted to make me number 5. And when they communicated that to me, I wrote a letter to the Attorney General, and I said, you need to check the signature on that contract. Finished. Not another word. So, your signature on their documents, whatever it is, you want to be careful about that. And there are a number of ways that you can, how should we say, dissolve your signature before it happens. One is to write without prejudice and then your signature. Another one is at arm's length. Some people use the UCC. I don't, because the UCC was created by shysters, and they didn't create it for our benefit. And of course, one of the ways is doing something like I did, just writing religious objector, and that's no signature at all. And whether that's a traffic ticket or anything else, what do they have if they got religious objector? And then of course, if they look and they say, what's this? Well, I'm a religious objector to this situation. And they say, no, you have to sign. Okay, well then I do without prejudice or at arm's length, and that's that. But again, those things will take and dissolve your signature so that it makes it essentially difficult or impossible